Play this violin, I'll marry you! Victoria Ashworth shrieks with laughter, jabbing her finger inches from Marcus Williams's face. The black janitor stands motionless as Victoria snatches the mop from his hands and waves it mockingly. This dirty mop is perfect for you. Both belong on the floor. She tosses it at his feet, forcing him to scramble and catch it before it hits the Persian rug. The Manhattan elite watch in stunned silence as Victoria points at the priceless violin mounted behind glass. That instrument costs more than you'll make in 10 lifetimes. People like you should stick to what you know, scrubbing toilets and taking out trash. Marcus's calloused hands tremble as he grips the mop handle, his jaw clenched tight. Have you ever seen someone so sure of their superiority that they'd bet everything on it? Victoria just made a wager that would cost her more than money. Marcus Williams has been invisible for 8 years. Every night at 11 p.m., he wheels his cart through the marble hallways of Harmony Classical Music Academy, cleaning around priceless instruments and golden plaques honoring donors whose children couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. The irony isn't lost on him. Tonight is different. Tonight, Victoria Ashworth is hosting her annual Preservation of Excellence Gala, where Manhattan's elite gather to celebrate keeping classical music pure. The same woman who cut the minority scholarship program 3 years running stands before oil paintings of the Academy's founder, spouting about maintaining standards. Marcus methodically polishes the mahogany banister while Victoria addresses her audience of fur coats and Swiss watches. Classical music isn't for everyone, she declares, her voice carrying the authority of inherited wealth. It requires refinement, breeding, cultural sophistication that simply cannot be taught to those who lack natural advantages. Scattered applause ripples through the crowd. Marcus has heard this speech before, delivered with the same venomous conviction each year. But tonight, something else catches his attention, the way Victoria's eyes linger on him as she emphasizes those people. The Academy's boardroom showcases Victoria's vision perfectly. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over leather-bound music scores, while portraits of dead white composers stare down approvingly. In the center of it all, mounted behind protective glass like a museum piece, hangs the 1924 Mittenwald violin, the founder's personal instrument that once symbolized his belief that music transcends all boundaries. Under Victoria's leadership, that violin hasn't been played in 5 years. It's become decoration, a prop to impress donors while she systematically eliminates every program designed to find talent in unexpected places. Marcus knows every grain of that violin's wood. For 8 years, he's maintained the humidity levels in this room, conditioned the instrument weekly, and watched it slowly lose its voice. Victoria treats it like furniture, never noticing the care required to preserve something so delicate. Excellence cannot be democratized, Victoria continues, gesturing toward a nervous young man tuning his violin in the corner. This is Preston Whitmore, our star pupil, third-generation Harmony legacy, trained by the finest instructors money can buy. Preston's bow wavers as he attempts a simple warm-up scale. Even from across the room, Marcus can hear the flat notes, the uncertain rhythm, the mechanical interpretation devoid of soul. But the crowd murmurs appreciatively. They hear breeding, not music. Marcus thinks of Sarah, 3 years gone, but her voice still echoes in his memory. Music doesn't care about your bank account, baby. It only cares about your heart. She would have loved Preston's earnest effort while gently correcting his technique. Sarah believed every student deserved a chance to find their voice. Victoria never met Sarah, never saw her arrive home exhausted from teaching underprivileged kids at the community center, then spend another 3 hours helping Marcus discover the language he'd been denied as a child, never witnessed the patient way Sarah broke down complex pieces, or how her eyes lit up when Marcus finally mastered a particularly challenging passage. Some people are born for service, Victoria declares, her gaze sweeping dismissively past Marcus. Others for art. The two should never be confused. The cruel irony burns. Victoria stands 15 feet from someone who understands Bach's mathematical perfection better than her prize student, who can hear the difference between a Guarneri and a Stradivarius from across a concert hall, who spent countless midnight hours in this very room learning to coax impossible beauty from strings and wood. But Marcus is just the help. The man who ensures their precious instruments stay perfectly humidified, who replaces rosin and changes strings, who knows the individual personality of every violin in their collection. Invisible labor keeping their world of culture functioning. Preston begins his performance, Vivaldi's Spring from the Four Seasons. It's a safe choice, familiar enough that even musical novices recognize the melody. But Marcus winces at every missed dynamic, every rushed passage where Preston's technique fails him. The music becomes background noise, elevator muzak dressed up in formal wear. Exquisite, Victoria breathes, though Marcus notices she's checking her phone during the performance. This is why we must protect classical tradition from dilution. The applause feels obligatory. Even the donors seem restless, more interested in networking than the butchered Vivaldi echoing off the walls. But Victoria beams with satisfaction, convinced she's witnessing greatness. Marcus continues cleaning, his movements automatic after 8 years of practiced invisibility. But tonight, something stirs beneath his calm exterior. Tonight, Sarah's memory feels particularly close, whispering the promise he's tried so hard to keep buried. The violin on the wall seems to watch him, waiting. Preston's final note dies with a whimper, his bow trembling as applause politely fills the silence. Victoria's smile falters for just a moment. Even she can't pretend that performance was anything but mediocre. But she recovers quickly, her mask of superiority sliding back into place. Magnificent interpretation, she lies smoothly, though Marcus notices several donors exchanging glances. This exemplifies why Harmony Academy maintains the highest standards. Music requires breeding, culture, refinement that cannot be manufactured. Mrs. Eleanor Carter, a prominent donor with sharp eyes and sharper instincts, raises an eyebrow. If you're so confident about who possesses musical ability, Victoria, perhaps you'd care to demonstrate your point? Victoria's laugh has an edge now. What do you mean? A little test, Mrs. Carter suggests, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. If breeding and background are everything, surely you could identify real talent versus pretense? The room shifts, sensing opportunity for entertainment. Victoria straightens, her competitive nature flaring. Of course, music speaks to those who understand it. Others are simply tone-deaf to excellence. Marcus accidentally knocks his cleaning supplies, the clatter drawing unwanted attention. Victoria's eyes lock onto him like a predator spotting prey. Perfect timing, she purrs, her voice dropping to theatrical whisper that carries to every corner. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll prove my point with a simple demonstration. She gestures grandly toward the mounted violin. I'll marry anyone, literally anyone, who can play that instrument better than Preston just did. The crowd murmurs with delighted anticipation. Victoria's confidence radiates through every word as she continues her cruel performance. But of course, that's impossible for... Her pause drips with venom. Certain people. Some individuals wouldn't know a Stradivarius from a toy fiddle. They might hold it backwards, or try to strum it like some street guitar. Marcus stops cleaning entirely. For 8 years, he's endured dismissive glances, condescending comments, and casual cruelty. But something about tonight feels different. Sarah's voice echoes in his memory. Promise me you'll let your music live, even if I can't. His weathered hands still grip the mop handle, but his posture begins to shift. Almost imperceptibly, his shoulders straighten. What if someone could... The words escape before Marcus can stop them. The entire room falls silent. The silence stretches like a held breath. Every face in the room turns toward Marcus, their expressions ranging from shock to amusement to barely concealed horror. Victoria's mouth opens slightly, her carefully constructed superiority momentarily cracking. Excuse me? She manages, her voice pitched higher than intended. Marcus sets down his mop with deliberate care, each movement measured and purposeful. The sound of the handle hitting the marble floor echoes like a gavel. I said, what if someone could play it better than Preston? Victoria recovers quickly, her laugh sharp and cutting. Oh, this is rich. The help thinks he can play violin. She turns to her audience, playing for their entertainment. Should we tell him it's not a banjo? Or perhaps he thinks classical music is just noise you make while the audience throws coins? The donors shift uncomfortably. Even by Victoria's standards, this feels excessive. But she's committed to her performance now, feeding off the crowd's nervous energy. You honestly believe you could touch that instrument? Victoria's voice drips with theatrical disbelief. That violin is worth more than you'll see in 5 lifetimes. It requires years of proper training, cultural education, refinement that simply cannot be acquired by people like you. Marcus stands perfectly still, his dark eyes fixed on the violin behind its protective glass. 3 years since Sarah's funeral. 3 years of keeping his promise buried beneath the safety of invisibility. But watching another generation of talented kids get dismissed while mediocrity gets celebrated breaks something inside him. "I'd like to try," he says quietly. The room erupts in uncomfortable murmurs. Victoria realizes she may have pushed too far, her bravado wavering. "Oh, I was obviously making a joke." "No." Mrs. Carter's voice cuts through the chatter like crystal. "A public promise is a public promise, Victoria, especially in front of 50 witnesses." Her eyes gleam with something between mischief and justice. "Unless you're not as confident as you claim?" Victoria's face cycles through emotions: panic, anger, calculation. She's trapped by her own arrogance, caught between backing down publicly or allowing what she considers an impossible humiliation. Marcus reaches into his cleaning cart and pulls out a pair of white cotton gloves. "For delicate items," he explains simply, though something about the way he handles them suggests they've served a different purpose before. The transformation begins. The white cotton gloves slide over Marcus's weathered hands like a second skin. The simple act transforms him, no longer the invisible janitor, but someone approaching something sacred. Victoria watches with growing unease as Marcus moves toward the violin with reverence that unsettles her casual dismissal. "This is ridiculous," she mutters, but her voice lacks its earlier conviction. "Someone stop this before he damages a priceless instrument." Mrs. Carter raises her hand. "The violin belongs to the Academy and the board has final say. I motion we allow this demonstration." Marcus stands before the protective glass case, studying the violin like a long-lost friend. His fingers trace the air above the mounting, never quite touching but somehow communicating. "1924 Mittenwald," he says quietly. "German craftsmanship, spruce top, maple back and sides. The varnish has aged beautifully." The room stirs. Even Preston looks surprised at the technical knowledge flowing from the janitor's lips. "Anyone can memorize Wikipedia," Victoria snaps, but uncertainty creeps into her voice. Marcus carefully lifts the violin from its mount. The way he cradles it, supporting the neck properly, avoiding pressure on the delicate finish, reveals familiarity that 8 years of dusting alone couldn't teach. He tests the strings gently, his ear catching microtones that escaped Preston entirely. "The humidity in this room varies too much," Marcus observes, making minute adjustments to the tuning pegs. "Wood expands and contracts. The instrument suffers without proper climate control." Victoria's confidence evaporates as Marcus demonstrates knowledge she doesn't possess. The donors lean forward, sensing something unexpected brewing. Marcus lifts the bow, a $3,000 piece of Pernambuco wood and horsehair that Preston treated like a club. In Marcus's hands, it becomes an extension of his soul. His bow hold is perfect, his posture transforming from janitor to maestro in seconds. "I'll play the same Vivaldi piece Preston performed," Marcus announces, "but perhaps differently." The first note silences every conversation. Where Preston's opening was hesitant and mechanical, Marcus's entry sings with authority and warmth. The violin responds to his touch like a lover's whisper, each note precisely placed yet flowing with natural musicality. Mrs. Carter's breath catches. She studied violin at Juilliard 40 years ago and recognizes mastery when she hears it. This isn't just competent playing, this is artistry. Marcus doesn't simply perform Vivaldi's Spring, he interprets it. His dynamics paint pictures, gentle morning breezes in the softer passages, thunderstorms building through accelerating scales, birds singing in delicate harmonics that dance above the melody. Every phrase tells a story, every note placed with intention and emotional truth. The technique is flawless. His vibrato adds life to sustained notes without overwhelming them. His bow changes create seamless legato lines, punctuated by crisp staccato that sparkles like raindrops. When he reaches the challenging, rapid passages that made Preston stumble, Marcus navigates them with ease, his fingers dancing across the fingerboard with balletic precision. But technique alone doesn't explain the magic happening in this room. Marcus plays with the kind of musical intelligence that cannot be taught, understanding phrase structure, breathing life into Vivaldi's mathematical perfection, finding emotional depths in familiar melodies that the composer himself would admire. Victoria stands frozen, her face cycling through shock, disbelief, and something approaching terror. Her entire worldview crumbles with each perfect note. Preston stares with his mouth open, realizing he's witnessing playing far beyond his capabilities. The donors whisper among themselves, but quietly, afraid to disturb something sacred. Several pull out phones to record, sensing they're witnessing something extraordinary. Marcus reaches the movement's climactic passage, a soaring melody that requires perfect intonation and emotional commitment. Instead of simply playing Vivaldi's written notes, he adds subtle ornamentations that elevate the music beyond its original conception. His interpretation becomes a conversation between past and present, honoring the composer while adding his own voice to the eternal dialogue. The final phrase approaches, Vivaldi's gentle conclusion that suggests spring's renewal and hope. Marcus draws his bow across the strings with such tenderness that the violin seems to sigh with contentment. The last note hangs in the air like incense, pure and perfect and somehow infinite. Silence. Complete, absolute silence for 5 full seconds. Then Mrs. Carter begins to clap slowly, deliberately. One by one, the others join until applause fills the room. Not the polite acknowledgement Preston received, but genuine appreciation for artistry witnessed. Marcus lowers the violin with the same reverence he showed approaching it. His transformation reverses. Shoulders relaxing, posture returning to the humble custodian who spent 8 years invisible in their midst. That was... Mrs. Carter searches for words. I haven't heard Vivaldi played with such understanding since I studied at the conservatory. Where did you learn to play like that? Before Marcus can answer, Victoria explodes. That was just lucky. Anyone can memorize one piece. Real musicians don't just play notes. They understand the cultural context, the historical significance, the proper interpretation that comes from years of formal training. Her voice rises with desperate authority, grasping for control over a situation spiraling beyond her comprehension. One song doesn't make you a musician. It makes you a very good mimic. Marcus nods thoughtfully, seemingly unaffected by her attack. You're absolutely right. That's why I played it differently than written. Vivaldi indicated basic dynamics and phrasing, but interpretation comes from understanding the music's emotional core. He pauses, his eyes meeting Victoria's for the first time with quiet confidence. Would you like me to play something Preston has never heard, perhaps something that requires cultural understanding? The challenge hangs between them like a blade. Victoria realizes she's walked into a trap of her own making, but pride prevents retreat. The room waits, sensing the real confrontation is about to begin. Marcus cradles the violin again, his fingers finding their positions with muscle memory born of countless midnight hours in this very room. I was thinking of Bach, he says simply. The chaconne from Partita No. 2. It's considered the most difficult piece ever written for solo violin. Preston's face goes pale. Even he knows that piece's reputation. Victoria's trap snaps shut around her own throat. She's committed now, public honor at stake. Fine, she manages, but when you fail, this charade ends. Marcus closes his eyes and whispers something too quiet for others to hear. This one's for you, Sarah. Marcus raises the bow, and the opening notes of Bach's chaconne fill the room like a prayer. This isn't the gentle beauty of Vivaldi. This is musical architecture, mathematical perfection given soul. The piece demands everything: technical mastery, emotional depth, spiritual understanding of loss and transcendence. Bach wrote the chaconne after his wife's death, pouring his grief into 15 minutes of solo violin that maps the human journey from despair to acceptance. Marcus doesn't just play these notes, he lives them, each variation telling his own story of love lost and music found. Victoria watches in growing panic as Marcus navigates the opening theme with flawless intonation. The donors lean forward, mesmerized by sounds they never expected to hear in their lifetimes. This isn't competent playing. This is the kind of artistry that transforms listeners. 5 minutes in, as Marcus builds toward the piece's emotional climax, Victoria can't stand it anymore. Stop! Her voice shatters the sacred atmosphere like a hammer through stained glass. This has gone far enough! Marcus's bow freezes mid-phrase, the music dying with surgical brutality. 50 faces turn toward Victoria, their expressions ranging from confusion to outrage at the interruption. "This is obviously fraud," Victoria declares, her voice shaking with desperate authority. "No one plays like this without extensive formal training. He's clearly had professional instruction he's hiding from us." Mrs. Carter's voice cuts through the confusion like ice. "What exactly are you suggesting, Victoria?" "He's a plant! A professional musician pretending to be custodial staff to embarrass us. This whole thing is a setup designed to make me look foolish." Victoria's accusations tumble out in rushed panic. "Real janitors don't play Bach. This man is lying about his background." The room erupts in uncomfortable murmurs. Victoria has crossed a line, but she's committed to her course now, doubling down on conspiracy rather than admitting error. Marcus sets the violin down carefully, his composure intact despite the public attack on his character. "You want my background, Miss Ashworth? I learned piano at 6 from Mrs. Rodriguez next door, who felt sorry for a kid whose mother worked 3 jobs. Violin at 8 from church musicians who donated their time because they believed music belonged to everyone." His voice remains calm, but something harder enters it. "At 12, I got a scholarship to summer music camp, the only black kid there. Teachers said I had potential but needed proper training that cost more than my family earned in 6 months. Victoria seizes on this admission. "So you admit you had formal instruction. You're not some self-taught prodigy. You had professional teachers lying about your background to gain sympathy." "At 14, Marcus continues, ignoring her interruption, "I chose to help my mother pay rent instead of chasing musical dreams. Funny how breeding matters less when you're choosing between violin lessons and keeping a roof over your family's head." The donors shift uncomfortably as Marcus's story reveals the ugly economics behind musical education. Victoria's talk of natural advantages sounds increasingly hollow. 20 years later, I met Sarah Williams. She taught violin at the community center downtown, the one that serves kids whose parents can't afford places like this." Marcus's voice softens with memory. "She heard me humming Bach while fixing her car and asked if I played." Mrs. Carter leans forward, recognizing the name. "Sarah Williams? She was legendary in music education circles, turned down offers from major conservatories to teach underprivileged children." Marcus nods. "For 15 years, she came home exhausted from teaching all day, then spent another 3 hours sharing everything she knew with me. Every night she'd say, 'Music doesn't care about your job title, baby. It only cares about your heart.'" The room falls silent as the truth emerges. This isn't fraud. This is love transformed into art through years of patient dedication. Victoria makes one final desperate attack. "So you admit your wife was basically giving you charity lessons? That's not the same as real conservatory training. You're a dilettante playing at being a musician." The cruelty of reducing 15 years of devoted teaching to charity lessons hangs in the air like poison. Several donors look genuinely disgusted at Victoria's callousness. Marcus picks up the violin again, his movements deliberate and calm. "Sarah died 3 years ago. Cancer. Her last words to me were, 'Promise you'll let your music live, even if I can't.'" He raises the bow, his eyes meeting Victoria's with quiet steel. "I've kept that promise every night for 8 years, practicing in this room after everyone goes home. Maintaining these instruments, protecting this music you treat like decoration." The pattern breaks completely. The room that saw him as invisible help now recognizes him as the guardian of their musical heritage, the one person who truly understood what they'd taken for granted. "Shall I finish the chaconne, Miss Ashworth? Or do you have more questions about my qualifications?" The silence stretches like a held breath as Marcus raises the violin again. Bach's chaconne waits, interrupted but not broken, demanding completion. This isn't just music anymore. It's a reckoning 15 years in the making. Marcus closes his eyes briefly, finding the exact emotional place where Victoria's interruption shattered the flow. When his bow touches the strings again, the music doesn't simply resume, it explodes back to life with renewed intensity, as if Bach himself is demanding justice for the disruption. The chaconne's middle section unfolds like a musical prayer. Marcus navigates the treacherous double stops, 2 notes played simultaneously that require absolute precision and years of practice to master. Where most violinists struggle to keep both voices clear, Marcus makes them sing in perfect harmony, each note crystalline and purposeful. Mrs. Carter grips her chair, recognizing technique that would challenge professional soloists. The rapid-fire arpeggios that trip up conservatory students flow from Marcus's fingers like water, each note precisely placed yet flowing with organic musicality. But technique alone doesn't explain the magic filling this room. Marcus plays the chaconne as Bach intended, not as a showcase of virtuosity, but as a meditation on loss transformed into transcendence. Each variation becomes a chapter in the story of grief, becoming acceptance, despair, finding hope. The emotional arc builds toward the piece's spiritual climax, the major key variations that suggest light breaking through darkness. Marcus's interpretation finds the joy hidden within Bach's mathematical perfection, the hope embedded in music's eternal promise of renewal. Preston stands transfixed, realizing he's witnessing playing far beyond anything he's experienced. The donors forget their networking, pulled into music that speaks directly to the soul. Even Victoria watches in horrified fascination as her worldview crumbles note by perfect note. Marcus reaches the chaconne's final variations. Bach's return to the opening theme, now transformed by everything that came before. The same melody that began in darkness now carries light, the musical journey from death to resurrection complete. The last note hangs in the air like a benediction, pure and perfect and somehow eternal. Marcus lowers the violin with the same reverence he brought to approaching it, his transformation from custodian to artist complete. 5 seconds of absolute silence. Then applause erupts. Not polite acknowledgement, but thunderous appreciation for something transcendent witnessed. The standing ovation lasts 3 full minutes, phones capturing a moment that will live forever in everyone present. Marcus has proven something that goes beyond music. He's demonstrated that greatness recognizes no boundaries, that genius can emerge from the most unexpected places. Victoria stands alone, isolated by her own cruelty, facing the ruins of everything she believed about talent, worth, and who deserves to be heard. The applause dies slowly, reluctantly, as if the room wants to hold on to the magic a little longer. Marcus carefully places the violin back in its case, his movements gentle and reverent. For a moment, victory feels complete. Artistic triumph achieved, dignity restored, Sarah's memory honored. Then Victoria strikes. Enough! Her voice cracks like a whip, cutting through the lingering wonder. This pathetic charade ends now. Security! 2 uniformed guards appear at the doorway, clearly confused by the elegant setting and well-dressed crowd. Victoria points at Marcus with theatrical authority. This man has committed theft. He's stolen Academy property and damaged a priceless instrument. The room erupts in shocked protests, but Victoria presses her attack with the desperation of someone whose entire identity is collapsing. That violin belongs to Harmony Academy. He had no authorization to touch it, let alone remove it from its case. I'm pressing charges for theft and vandalism. Mrs. Carter steps forward, her voice sharp with outrage. Victoria, you publicly challenged him to play. You can't. I can and I will. Victoria snarls, her mask of refinement finally slipping completely. This person has perpetrated fraud against this institution. He's obviously had extensive professional training that he's been hiding while working here under false pretenses. The security guards hesitate, clearly uncomfortable with arresting someone who just delivered a transcendent musical performance. But Victoria's authority as CEO carries weight, and they move reluctantly toward Marcus. Furthermore, Victoria continues, her voice rising to hysterical pitch, I demand a full investigation into how he gained access to our facilities after hours. This man has been trespassing, using Academy property without permission, and probably stealing sheet music and equipment. Marcus stands quietly, his dignity intact despite the vicious assault on his character. But something shifts in his posture, not defeat, but a deeper resolve. Victoria has revealed her true nature, and he's no longer willing to remain invisible. Miss Ashworth, he says quietly, his voice carrying new authority. Are you really sure you want to pursue this course? Victoria's laugh is sharp and bitter. Are you threatening me? A janitor threatening the CEO of a prestigious institution? This just proves my point about your character. I'm not threatening anyone, Marcus replies calmly. I'm asking if you're prepared for the consequences of calling the police, because there will be an investigation, and investigations tend to uncover interesting things. For the first time, Uncertainty flickers across Victoria's face. But she's committed now, trapped by her own desperation. I have nothing to hide. Unlike you, I've been honest about my background and qualifications. Marcus reaches into his cleaning cart and pulls out his phone. 8 years, Miss Ashworth. 8 years of practicing in this room after hours, maintaining these instruments, protecting this collection you treat like furniture. He scrolls through hundreds of videos on his device. Every session recorded. Timestamps, locations, everything documented. Want to see what I've been doing during those trespassing hours you're so concerned about? The first video shows Marcus carefully conditioning violin wood, explaining humidity control to his phone camera. The second shows him replacing worn strings on Academy instruments, his technique clearly professional. Video after video reveals the same pattern, not theft, but devoted maintenance and care. This phone contains 3 years of evidence showing me protecting Academy property, Marcus continues, his voice growing stronger. But it also contains something else. Audio recordings of every board meeting, every conversation about scholarship cuts, every decision to exclude talented minority students. Victoria's face goes pale. Those meetings were private, not when they happen in a room I'm paid to clean, Marcus interrupts. Amazing how invisible people become when you need to discuss things you'd rather the public not hear. Mrs. Carter's eyes narrow. What kind of conversations, Marcus? Marcus looks directly at Victoria, his calm demeanor more terrifying than any threat. Should I share your thoughts on keeping standards high by rejecting scholarship applications based on zip codes? Or perhaps your private comments about ensuring classical music remains in the right hands? The donors shift uncomfortably, recognizing the implications. Victoria realizes she's walked into a trap far more sophisticated than she imagined. You're bluffing, she whispers, but her voice lacks conviction. Marcus smiles sadly. Sarah taught me that documentation protects the powerless. Always have evidence, she'd say. Truth needs proof. He holds up the phone like evidence in court. So please, Miss Ashworth, call the police. Let's have that investigation. Let's examine every recording, every video, every piece of evidence about what really happens in this institution. Victoria stands frozen, realizing her counterattack has backfired spectacularly. The weapon she thought would destroy Marcus might instead destroy her. The silence stretches taut as Victoria realizes her trap has become her prison. The phone in Marcus's hand contains years of evidence that could destroy not just her career, but the carefully constructed facade of Harmony Academy's excellence. Mrs. Carter breaks the silence first. Victoria, I think it's time we heard what Marcus has to say, without interruption. This is my academy, Victoria sputters, but her authority crumbles with each word. I won't be intimidated by threats from someone who's been protecting your reputation for 8 years? Marcus's voice remains calm, but steel underlies every syllable. Someone who's heard every conversation about keeping undesirable students out? Every joke about how scholarship kids would lower the tone? Preston steps forward unexpectedly, his voice shaking but determined. I've heard those conversations too. I thought it was just how things worked. His face burns with shame. But after hearing you play tonight, I realize how much talent we've probably dismissed. Victoria whirls on her prize student. Preston, you don't understand the complexities of maintaining institutional standards. I understand that you told my parents the academy needed to be selective about cultural fit, Preston interrupts, growing bolder. I understand that's why Jessica Martinez got rejected despite scoring higher than me on every assessment. The dominoes begin falling. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a board member who's remained silent until now, speaks up. Marcus, those recordings you mentioned, do they include discussions about budget allocations? Marcus nods solemnly. 3 years of conversations about redirecting scholarship funds to facility improvements that were never made. Money that was supposed to help talented kids instead went to other purposes. Mrs. Carter's voice cuts like a blade. What other purposes, Marcus? Executive bonuses, private donor entertainment. Miss Ashworth's office renovation costs more than the entire scholarship program. Marcus's evidence unfolds methodically, each revelation devastating. All while she publicly claimed budget constraints prevented diversity initiatives. The donors exchanged sharp glances. Their contributions were supposed to support musical education, not executive luxury. Several pull out phones, already calculating damage control for their own reputations. Sarah Kim, a scholarship student who's been quietly observing, finds her voice. Mr. Marcus helped me when my violin bridge broke and I couldn't afford repairs. He fixed it during his break and didn't ask for anything. Said music was too important to let money stop it. More testimonies emerge. Other students remember small kindnesses. Instruments tuned for free, practice rooms unlocked after hours, gentle encouragement when formal instruction felt cold and dismissive. The invisible janitor has been more present for these young musicians than their paid instructors. This is ridiculous, Victoria protests, but her support evaporates with each revelation. You're all being manipulated by a disgruntled employee who's clearly unstable. Unstable? Mrs. Carter's voice rises dangerously. The man who just played Bach with more understanding than most professionals? Who's been maintaining our instrument collection better than our paid technicians? Marcus holds up his phone again. Would you like to hear the recording from last month's board meeting? The one where you discussed selling the founder's violin to fund your salary increase? The collective gasp from the donors sounds like air being sucked from the room. The founder's violin, the symbol of the Academy's original mission, was nearly sold for personal gain. That's a lie, Victoria whispers, but her face betrays her. Marcus plays a brief audio clip. Victoria's voice, crystal clear, discussing the violin's auction value and how its sale could be disguised as collection optimization. The room listens in horrified silence as their CEO casually discusses betraying the Academy's most sacred trust. Dr. Vasquez stands slowly, her face pale with rage. Victoria, I am moving for an emergency board vote on your leadership. Seconded, Mrs. Carter snaps immediately. This is a coup! Victoria shrieks, her composure completely shattered. You can't remove me based on lies from a janitor. We can remove you based on evidence of financial misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty, Dr. Vasquez replies coldly. Marcus, would you be willing to share those recordings with our legal team? Marcus nods gravely. Sarah always said the truth protects itself. These recordings exist because someone needed to document what was really happening here. The tide has turned completely. Victoria stands isolated while her former supporters distance themselves rapidly. The donors who once applauded her exclusionary policies now see them as liability and scandal. Mrs. Carter addresses the room with authority. I call for an immediate suspension of Victoria Ashworth pending a full investigation. All in favor? Hands rise throughout the room, donors, board members, even Preston. Victoria's empire crumbles in real time, built on prejudice and maintained through corruption. Marcus has gathered more than allies. He's assembled an army of conscience, united by music's power to reveal truth and demand justice. The vote is unanimous. Victoria Ashworth stands alone in the center of the room that once worshipped her authority, watching her empire collapse in real time. But cornered predators are most dangerous, and Victoria has one final card to play. Fine, she hisses, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You want the truth? Here's the truth. Her eyes lock onto Marcus with pure hatred. This man has been stealing from us for years, not just practice time, actual theft, equipment, sheet music, probably selling information to competing institutions. The room stirs uneasily. Even with everything revealed, Victoria's accusations carry the weight of institutional authority. I have security footage, Victoria continues, desperation lending conviction to her lies. 8 years of this person entering restricted areas, accessing files he had no business touching. He's been running a long con and you've all been playing. Marcus remains perfectly calm, but Mrs. Carter sees something shift in his posture. The quiet janitor who absorbed years of casual cruelty is gone. In his place stands someone who understands his own worth. Miss Ashworth, Marcus says quietly, are you absolutely certain you want to discuss security footage? Victoria's confidence wavers, but she presses forward. I've already called for a complete audit. Every recording, every access log, every late-night meeting with board member Richardson about the scholarship fund diversion. Marcus interrupts gently. Every weekend session with contractor Williams about invoice inflation. Every private conversation with your accountant about offshore accounts. The blood drains from Victoria's face. She realizes too late that someone who cleans at night sees everything, especially meetings scheduled when buildings are supposed to be empty. You're bluffing, she whispers, but terror creeps into her voice. Marcus pulls out a small digital recorder, old-fashioned, reliable, the kind custodial staff use to report maintenance issues. Sarah bought me this 8 years ago. Said documentation protects the innocent. He sets it on the table between them. Should I play the conversation from 3 weeks ago about selling donor contact lists to private music schools? Mrs. Carter's gasp is audible. Selling donor information would be a massive breach of trust, potentially illegal. Victoria lunges for the recorder, but Marcus calmly moves it away. Or perhaps the discussion about inflating insurance claims on instruments that were never actually damaged? Stop! Victoria pleads, her authority completely evaporating. Please! But Marcus isn't finished. 8 years of abuse, 8 years of watching talented kids get dismissed, 8 years of protecting an institution that never protected him. All of it culminates in this moment. The security footage you mentioned is interesting, Marcus continues, his voice steady and implacable. Because it shows me arriving at 11 p.m. and leaving at 7 a.m. every single night for 8 years. It also shows you arriving at midnight on multiple occasions for meetings that don't appear on any official calendar. He stands slowly, and for the first time in this confrontation, he looks directly at every person in the room. It shows me carefully maintaining instruments while listening to conversations I was never supposed to hear. Conversations about denying scholarships to qualified students because their last name sounded too ethnic. Conversations about raising tuition specifically to exclude middle-class families. Conversations about everything you claim to stand against. The donors look sick. Their charitable contributions have been funding discrimination, their tax-deductible donations supporting systematic exclusion. Preston steps forward, his voice stronger now. I want to hear the recordings, all of them. As do I, Dr. Vasquez adds. The board has a responsibility to understand the full scope of this situation. Victoria makes one last desperate play. Even if those recordings exist, they were made without consent. They're inadmissible, illegal. Actually, Mrs. Carter interrupts, New York is a one-party consent state. If Marcus was present during these conversations, he had every right to record them. Her smile is sharp as a blade, especially if he suspected criminal activity. The legal noose tightens around Victoria's neck. She realizes that her final gambit has only accelerated her downfall. Marcus picks up the violin one last time, cradling it with the same reverence he's shown throughout this extraordinary night. Miss Ashworth, you asked me to play this violin. You said you'd marry anyone who could make it sing like a master. He raises the bow and plays a single, perfect note, clear, pure, and infinite. The sound hangs in the air like judgment. I don't want to marry you, Marcus says quietly as the note fades. I don't want your apology. I don't even want your job. He places the violin back in its case with infinite care. I just want music to be free. Free from prejudice, free from gatekeeping, free from people who think talent requires their permission to exist. The room erupts in sustained applause, not for performance this time, but for justice finally served. Victoria stands defeated, her cruelty exposed, her authority stripped away by the very person she tried to destroy. Marcus has won more than a musical competition. He's reclaimed dignity for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong, everyone who's ever been judged by appearance rather than ability. The showdown is complete, truth has triumphed, and music itself has been set free. 6 months later, the morning sun streams through the windows of Harmony Classical Music Academy's newly renovated practice rooms. The sound of scales and etudes fills the air, but something fundamental has changed. The music carries hope now, voices from every background blending in harmonious possibility. Marcus Williams adjusts his tie, still getting used to wearing one daily, as he reviews the afternoon schedule. His official title is Director of Instrument Conservation and Community Outreach, but everyone simply calls him Professor Marcus. The transformation from invisible janitor to visible leader feels surreal some mornings, but Sarah's memory keeps him grounded. Victoria Ashworth is gone. The board's investigation revealed financial misconduct spanning years, embezzled scholarship funds, inflated contractor bills, even attempts to sell the founder's violin to private collectors. She currently faces federal charges while her legal team argues plea bargains. The Academy settled multiple discrimination lawsuits quietly, using funds recovered from Victoria's offshore accounts. The real changes run deeper than personnel. The Academy's mission statement now reads, Excellence in Music Education, recognizing that talent emerges from every community and deserves cultivation regardless of economic background. It's not just words. Scholarship applications have tripled, and admission criteria now emphasize musical aptitude over family pedigree. Marcus enters practice room 7, where Preston Whitmore works through a challenging Brahms sonata. The former Golden Boy has become one of Marcus's most dedicated students, trading privilege for genuine growth. His technique has improved dramatically under Marcus's patient guidance. Better, Marcus observes as Preston finishes a difficult passage. But remember, Brahms wasn't showing off. Every note serves the emotional arc. Try thinking of it as conversation, not performance. Preston nods eagerly, no longer the entitled student who expected praise for mediocrity. Watching Marcus play that night shattered his assumptions about talent and worth. Professor Marcus, could you demonstrate the rubato in measures 40 through 48? Marcus picks up his violin, the same 1924 Mittenwald that Victoria once used as decoration. The board voted unanimously to designate it his personal instrument, acknowledging his years of devoted care. Under his touch, it sings with renewed life, played daily rather than gathering dust behind glass. His demonstration transforms Brahms's complex rhythms into natural breathing, showing Preston how musical time bends in service of expression. Music is patient, Marcus explains. It waits for you to understand its heart, not just its mechanics. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as interim CEO, appears in the doorway. Marcus, the New York Times reporter, is here for your interview. The media attention still feels strange. Hash justice for Marcus trended globally after someone posted a video of his Bach performance, generating millions of views and transforming public conversation about arts education. Documentary crews have filmed at the Academy, showing how systemic change happens when institutions embrace their founding values. But Marcus remains focused on the work rather than fame. 5 more minutes, he tells Dr. Vasquez. Preston's having a breakthrough with this passage. The reporter can wait. Students come first, a principle that guides every decision now. Sarah Kim, the scholarship student Victoria tried to exclude, has become one of the Academy's most promising young violinists. She practices in the next room, her talent finally receiving proper nurturing. 3 other janitors have revealed hidden musical abilities, creating an informal evening ensemble that performs monthly for Academy donors. Mrs. Carter established the Sarah Williams Memorial Scholarship, funding full tuition for talented students from underserved communities. The first recipients include a jazz pianist from the Bronx, a cellist from rural Alabama, and a composer from East LA. Their diverse voices enrich the Academy's sound, proving that excellence has many accents. The founder's original vision has been restored. Music transcends boundaries again, artificial barriers dissolved by recognition that talent respects no zip code, no skin color, no family bank account. The Academy attracts students and faculty who choose substance over status, artistry over ancestry. Marcus still arrives early and stays late, but now he walks through well-lit hallways as a respected colleague rather than invisible help. The same hands that once mopped floors now shape young musicians' understanding of their craft. The same ears that heard every flat note and rushed passage now guide students toward musical truth. In his office, Sarah's photograph prominent on the desk, Marcus reviews applications for next semester's community outreach program. Hundreds of kids want to learn, their enthusiasm undimmed by economic challenges or social obstacles. Each application represents potential waiting to bloom, given proper cultivation and care. The violin rests in its stand, ready for the next lesson, the next student, the next moment when music reveals its democratic magic. Marcus has kept his promise to Sarah. Their music lives, touching new hearts, creating new possibilities. Justice served, dignity restored, talent liberated. The revolution is complete, but the work continues. The reporter finishes her interview as afternoon light fades across Manhattan. Marcus walks her to the Academy's entrance, past walls now displaying photos of students from every background, their diversity a testament to music's universal language. One final question, she asks, pausing at the founder's restored portrait. What would you tell people who feel invisible, overlooked, dismissed by those in power? Marcus considers carefully, his weathered hands folding behind his back. I'd tell them what Sarah taught me. Your worth isn't determined by who recognizes it. Talent doesn't need permission to exist, only opportunity to flourish. He glances back toward the practice rooms where evening students are arriving. Adults pursuing delayed dreams, children discovering new possibilities, teachers learning that excellence wears many faces. Victoria was right about one thing, Marcus continues with a gentle smile. Some people are born for service, others for art. She just didn't understand that the highest service is helping art find its voice, and the greatest art serves something larger than itself. The Academy's evening concert begins as they reach the street. Through open windows, Dvorak's New World Symphony flows into the city air. Performed by students Victoria would have deemed unsuitable, led by faculty who value substance over status. The music carries both professional polish and authentic soul, proving that excellence and inclusion aren't opposites, but partners. Marcus's phone buzzes with messages from former students, now studying at conservatories across the country. Preston sent a video of his Juilliard audition success. Sarah Kim shared news of her scholarship to study in Vienna. The ripple effects continue spreading, each success story validating the belief that talent deserves cultivation, regardless of its source. "Remember Victoria's words that night?" Marcus asks the reporter. "She said some people serve, others create art. What she didn't realize is that music serves everyone equally. It just requires people willing to listen." 6 months ago, a CEO's cruelty intended to humiliate became the catalyst for transformation. What started as mockery became revolution, prejudice became justice, silence became song. The violin that once gathered dust now sings daily. The institution that once excluded now embraces. The man once invisible now illuminates paths for others. What hidden talents might be cleaning your office right now? What genius goes unrecognized because it doesn't match your expectations? If you had Marcus's choice, stay safe in silence or risk everything to be heard, what would you do? Watch again at 8:47 when Marcus first touches the violin. There's a detail only musicians will catch that reveals everything about his true identity. Stories like Marcus's happen daily, but most go untold. If you believe talent deserves recognition, regardless of its packaging, subscribe for more proof that everyone has music inside them. They just need the right stage to let it out.
The story you heard today wasn't cleaned up. It was told exactly as it happened. At Black Voices Uncut, we believe that's the only way truth can live. If you felt something, hit like, comment, and your reaction, and subscribe. Every week, we bring you voices that refuse to be silenced.